Michael and I have done this before. We've done this before for the Royal Television Society. It's a bit like, so this is the second time we've met in interview. It's a bit like Michael Parkinson and Muhammad Ali, except as you will soon discover, I am no Michael Parkinson, but Michael's got a pretty good left hook. Now I mention that because the last time we did this, it was mostly for students. We were talking about how you film comedy. The audience tonight is a mix of professionals and students, but we were kind of talking about still game in the past tense a bit, weren't we?
Yeah, we were, yeah.
So, did you think at that time you directed your last ever episode of Still Game?
Was it before the Hydro? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah, I thought I had directed my last one then. And in about 2013, I was doing a Gallic comedy with Greg Hempel, and halfway through filming that, and that was in June 2013, he came over to me during the filming of it and said, we're putting the band back together. And I, being a big Blues Brothers fan, thought, this is great, but I had no idea what he was talking about. And then I said, what do you mean? And he said, we're going to be doing a live show and we'd like you to direct it. And I was like, this is fantastic, when? And he said, about a year and 4 months. And I thought, yeah, that'll never happen. And the following year, in the October, we did the live show. And I think the popularity of that, 210,000 people over the run, kind of reminded us just how much the warmth for the show was. And it would have been crazy not to. And then there's a variety of people who own the rights for Still Game, a variety of companies. They spent about a year arguing, and then we made this series. And we always knew that people would want it. We always said we wanted it to go network across the whole of Britain, not just BBC Scotland. But obviously for the funding for that to happen, money's a lot better if it goes across the network rather than the BBC Scotland budget as well. And it took about a year or so before we knew it. And then I started prep this May, just gone by, and literally finished about 3 Fridays ago. So I finished about 3 days before the last episode was transmitted.
I'm going to pick up on a point there I was going to come to later. You mentioned that the network money and the fact that it's shown across the whole of the UK. Did you alter the scripts or the way that you filmed it or anything about it to try and make it more accessible?
The series before has gone network. Series 5 and 6 went network. And the only things we changed were, instead of coming into the Klansman and saying this is a smashing shop, you would say this is a smashing pub. And the word shop is fairly uniquely west of Scotland, or some people talk about a shop, but not a lot of people. And you might call, instead of a Goldie, you might say whiskey, things like that. But actually, in terms of the dialect, no, absolutely not. And the accent, absolutely not. We might ask occasionally, instead of Isa might say, just a wee moofy, pardon my terrible Scottish accent. I've lived here since '83 and I'm still shit at it. Instead of moothfy, we might say moothful, but still mooth, not mouthful, or something like that. So you might get them to pronounce the L's, but it's not something we purposely looked out for. And I think that's really important because Gavin Stacey had a lot of Welsh kind of stuff in it. Auf Wiedersehen Pet had an awful lot of quite a strong Geordie in it. And I think that one of the strengths of comedy across Britain is the accent. You know, you listen to Billy Connolly swear and he says fuck off like nobody else does. And it's partly because of his accent. Whereas Lenny Henry and Jasper Carrott from Birmingham, they can't be offensive when they swear because a Brummie accent isn't offensive. You know what I mean? So it's really important that we stay true. And also, let's be honest, we want to make it for the fans, and the fans are predominantly Scottish. So it's important that we don't change it. And the biggest fear out of people I spoke to when the new series came back is they were worried it wasn't going to be Still Game. And I remember talking to Amy MacDonald, the singer, and she was really nervous at the first screenings about it. And she said afterwards, I don't know what I was being so worried about. Of course it's Still Game. But the titles are new, but they're the same titles. The camera has changed because the TV landscape in the last 10 years has changed. So we used an Alexa Mini, which is a fantastic quality camera, instead of Digibeta. Actually, we almost started on 4x3 in 2000 still. So, of course, things will change. And this sounds a bit pretentious, excuse me, but there was an interview I read with Jeremy Irons who said, I always trust myself, but push myself. And I was in an interesting position where I had to trust myself. I've done Still Game before, but I want to push it to make it relevant for today. So for instance, in the past I might have left really long shots, a 2-shot on Jack and Victor. This time I would also pick up 2 singles, so we could pick the pace of the cutting up ever so slightly. Things like that, which is an option. And also going out across the BBC network, you have to be really careful you don't end up patronising Scotland by saying, oh, it needs to be better because the English are seeing it. That's just bollocks. But what you do need to make sure is that it stands amongst other modern day comedies, both in quality production and feel and tone. So it was brand new design, brand new sets, because we'd burnt the others, and a new camera, and a couple of key talent changed. But we want to keep it as still game, and I hope you guys think it is still game, as it were. I'm just going to get some crisps, I'm starving.
Okay. I'll just...
eat things.
Do you think you'll be able to hear my question from over there?
Yeah.
I'm fine, thank you. Did the network money come with any interesting network input, or...
It came with 8 exec producers.
8?
8 exec producers. For those who don't work in the industry, you usually have 1 or 2. So if I pride myself on getting very few notes. If you've got 8 notes from an exec, you're doing great. But when there are 8 of them, you get 64 notes, and some of them might, how can I put this politically, be diametrically opposed. It was interesting. But no, not at all. I think what was really lovely, and I genuinely mean this, Shane Allen and Chris Sussman down in England, in London. Shane was a big fan of the show already. He's the head of comedy. And when you've got something that works and has an audience, and you just want to make it new and bring it back, but give it the publicity machine of a full network show, I genuinely think Scott's worried about that prospect of not being the same more than anyone else did. And actually, they were very supportive. They said, you know what you're doing. Otherwise, they might have not picked me. They might have, they might have wanted to recast, or do we do this, do we do that? And they said, no, you've got 44 episodes or whatever it is going around there. So no, they were extremely supportive. And to be fair, the execs were extremely supportive and let us get on with it, which is great. And so they should,
So tell us a bit about that first day then, when you've got the band back together.
What was pre-production or production?
I suppose I'm thinking of the first time that you're... Well, tell us about that, because presumably you were in script meetings with Ford and Greg and...
I always love the read-throughs when we get everyone around the table and we read through it, and as soon as Mark Cox sits down and goes, "Hi, Daddy," and he's instantly Tam, and you can't help but laugh straight away, and it instantly comes back to life. The biggest, loveliest thing is when we did the Hydro show, because we hadn't met for about 7 years, and we keep in touch, but we're not all pals that live together and all the rest of it. And partly to have that authority over the people who are the writers, they own the company and they own every scene, I don't necessarily associate with them all the time. So when we all came back for the Hydro show to sit down and have the read-through, there was about 30 seconds of awkwardness of, hi, haven't seen you, how are you? And then just drop back straight into it. So for me as a director, what's really lovely is when you come back to shoot it, that's already been, that kind of glass thing has already been broken. What was interesting was having people like Chris Sussman, who didn't know the show at all, a very London kind of guy, come up and listen to it, and hanging by the coattails to the accents, no Ernie, Ernie, aye, and he's going like that, trying to watch what's going on. That was quite fascinating, but no, it's just lovely to hear it again. It really was.
And there's someone once said about the Beatles, so they didn't necessarily want the band to get back together again, but they'd like them to all be mates again. Is there a sense of that? They're all, they're all back together
fabulous
again.
Pals who spend every day in a hot tub together.
I've so imagined living in the same terrace houses next to each other. You talk about the script meeting. Aaron Sorkin, I was listening to something about Aaron Sorkin, and he's meticulous about his scripts. Every stammer, every repeated word has to be unchanged from the script meeting through. Is that the same as Still Game, or is it just kind of, does everybody chip in?
We had more drafts this time than we've had in the past because we had more exec layers, and we wanted to make sure that the references were correct and would hit. But what I love about Ford and Greg's script, I'll give you an example. Years ago, Naveed was really rough, and in the morning he said, I feel rough like the badger's arse. And Ford and Greg said, it's not the badger's arse, you feel rough like a badger's arse. What's important is the analogy, not that you can't speak Scottish and get the wrong participle beforehand. And if you're analysing a and the, you should never put a weak joke before a really good joke, so don't try and dilute it by he can't speak Scottish, rough as the badger's arse, as opposed to I feel rough like a badger's arse, and then all you can see is this big hairy Dickie Davies arse in your head. It's that kind of thing that they really concentrate on. What I will do is sometimes change location or change who might do a line if there's a random line given out. Very occasionally if some of the cast think of a better way of doing it, they might ask for it. But I would say 95% of the time, once the rewrites are done, that's it, and it's Ford and Greg who rewrite it, no one else, and we don't go through lines together. Might talk about storylines, we might talk about scene ideas or suggestions for stuff, but not actual words. And I think that's important to have a unique voice. We've all watched committees that are designed by, comedies that are designed by committees, and as soon as you start to dilute that, you lose the essence of it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Should we have a clip? Now, the playing in of clips is a bit Heath Robinson, but we do have clips, and we are going to play them. So, James, we'll start with the first one, which is the bath clip, I believe. Yeah?
So, I'll just tell you about this clip. Hang on, James. I'll tell you about
first.
This clip quickly. What it is I want to show you, we all know that there are sad bits in Still Game, and I want to show you here Paul Riley. It's from the first episode of this series where he's talking to his brother Walter, if you've not seen the scene. And Walter only appears occasionally and takes money off him. And I want you to watch the difference in levels of performance between Jack, Victor and Isa in the bathroom, and Paul playing Winston, and Gary Miller, who its first television acting appearance, did a fabulous job playing Walter, his brother. And we intercut the scenes. They weren't written that way. They were kind of like all the bath stuff, then this scene, then that. But if you watch it now, when you watch it intercut, it's about 2.5 minutes long, thereabouts. Just watch how little Paul Riley does with his acting, and compared to the other stuff beforehand, and then we'll have a chat afterwards.
Okay.
And I think I've talked just long enough for him to set this up. These are salt and vinegar. I hate salt and vinegar.
Would you like me to get you another flavour of crisp?
Yeah, no, as a cheese.
You ready? 1, 2, 3,
That's a good gang of Holly over here, Wilson.
Oh, aye. I'm really lucky. Jack, Victor, Tam, Eric, Isa, Naveed. Oh, and Stevie the rookie.
That was awful for you, sir. Poor old Auntie Lily, wasn't
Nervous.
it? And what is
Reason for your wee visit. Your bus leaves in an hour. There's still one last wee bit of business to take care of, isn't there? The bike.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I warned you! My skin is soaking up! How can you still be stuck? Oh, shut up! I'm not on your night story, you daft old troy. Get for you!
Hey, in my kitchen over the street.
What's he got to do with people like the Jack?
Oh, everybody wants to get a couple of dishes.
I'm a friend of that anger management.
Right, out the road!
This is the letter that I wrote telling you the lady passed. As soon as I arrived, I knew you would be the mum at the back of it, because that's how you operate. 4 times in the last 40 years I've seen you. Each time to borrow money, which you never paid back. You never even came to your mom or your dad's funeral, because you knew they had nothing.
So, was there any money?
Aye. She left 4,000.
That's 2,000 each. Take one. No.
So what's interesting for me is primetime BBC One Across the Network, 9:30 on a Friday. if we've got the nerve to try and put that kind of stuff, it hopefully reminds people that Still Game is rooted in reality of what happens in old people's relationships and things like that. And I think Paul Riley's fantastic in that, but it's almost like a wee drama as opposed to high comedy. And contrasting the two never lets you get away into high farce. And I think sometimes there is a place for it. Mrs. Brown's Boys is high farce all the way through, but it's completely unreal. And what I'm really proud of is when people say to me, I know a Jack, I know a Victor, my granddad's like that, or this happened to him, or whatever, and things like that. And for us to, partly the network trusted us to do it as well, but for us to have that ability. But normally when you're in the Klansman, you've got Bobby, you've got Jack, Victor, Winston, Tam, Shug, Eric, Isa, Naveed even in this series, cast of thousands. It was lovely to have just those two, or those three in that scene and direct them. Because normally you're juggling with kittens, you know, they're all off the trolley, but it was really nice to have that time to do that as well, and to let it breathe. Now, that scene is longer, we've cut quite a bit out of those scenes, but each episode this series was about 34, 35 minutes long, and we need 28 minutes, excluding credits and titles, to go on the network, thereabouts. So you're losing about 8 minutes worth of stuff. I don't know if you know this, but Fawlty Towers was almost twice as long, so half the episodes are missing. And it does mean that you concentrate on the very best of stuff. But what's really important is that actually the best of stuff is vital for the story, not just the laughs, you know. And what's interesting, I've just seen my lovely editor down there, Laura. Stand up, Laura. I want you to give this woman an applause. Stand up for me, Laura. This is Laura Wilson, who edits all of Still Game. Stand up, love. Stand up. Laura and I spent about a quarter of a year in a little room together editing this. I've had marriages last less time. And she had the suggestion of breaking up those scenes and cutting backwards and forwards. And it's not how the script's written, but sometimes my advice to editors in here is take that chance and see what would happen if you break up a scene. Now, the difficulty in comedy is if you break up a scene, you need to find another out that isn't written without a high joke, because a scene should end on a good punchline. And if you can find a nice point that still works, try it for pacing, okay? That's my honest advice, try it. You may decide not to do it, but with non-litter editing these days, it's not going to offend anyone, and you can just undo very, very quickly. And Laura and I, with a lot of it, because we had to cut so much out, would try and break up scenes to see whether or not they would fit in a particular pattern and a sequence.
What's the process when you finish? So you and Laura have done something like that. Are you showing it to the execs before? Do Ford and Greg see it at that point?
So what happens is, we started filming on Monday the 4th of July for 6 weeks. Laura started on the Tuesday, the 5th of July, cutting. Obviously we're away filming, and every day we get dailies back if we want to watch it. I hate watching rushes, it's something I don't do, but I will watch assemblies at the end of the week in case we miss something, and Laura would say, oh, you might want to get this shot or something. So fast forward to 13th of August, I start editing with Laura. That first week is my fine cut. So she's done a great job of a rough assembly, but won't make any editorial decisions about what to cut. So it's still a very long episode. And then she and I will go through it and hone it down until it's about the right length, about 29 minutes to 29 minutes 30 seconds. And then we show it to my producer, Jackie Sinclair, and Steve Canny, who's the exec at BBC Scotland. They make their comments on it, and we do those notes. Then we send it out to everyone but Shane Allen. So all the rest of the execs get a look, Ford and Greg, and all the rest of them, and we get a whole set of notes which Jackie, our producer, fabulously collates into one set of colour-coded ones, which I try and set fire to and put in the bin, but then pay lavish attention to. And then once we've done all those notes, it goes to Shane, and Shane watches it and just says, I'm happy, or change this or that. And it's kind of a hierarchy of job structure. And then it comes back from there, and once that's done, it's picture locked. It simultaneously goes to grading and to track laying, and then dub, and then online, and those two are married for the screenings, and then it gets the laugh track gets added on, and then it's laid back for a final version.
Ever change anything after screenings, or are they public screenings or just?
Yeah, public screenings. Yeah. 33,000 people applied for 200 tickets to come along and record the laughs. Yeah. I used to do Chewing the Fat, and Chewing the Fat we would show maybe 280 sketches, and we would sift out what people laughed at and make a show, the series from 180. So you'd lose maybe 100 sketches or thereabouts. With this, up until now, we've always cut it for as it should be, and then let it have the laughs, and then that's the final program, because I believe I want to make my show. not I want the public to decide what the show is. And I think that's quite important. However, because there's so much more material, we can't leave the long gaps that we used to leave where we knew there would be a big laugh. So the laugh track sounds slightly different, where it's been ramped down really quickly and all that kind of stuff. So there is an argument potentially for showing it to an audience much longer and just tightening the bits. I've still to make a decision on that, and the powers that be still have. I don't know if we'll change that, but it very much affects the length of the edit, because you still need to show them a polished show. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think you should show them the show, they laugh at it, and then it goes out, you know.
Right, well, you're on a roll now, so we'll go to clip 2, I think, which is another sort of infamous one from the new series. Do you want to say anything about it before James?
Could you keep the volume down for this? What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk over this clip all the way through, because I want to tell you just a little bit about the directing of it. So this clip here is where Jack and Victor have decided, and they think Tam is distilling illegal hooch, illegal alcohol, and they've come to his house. And for those who've seen it, there's a big smash-up scene in here where they smash his kitchen up as well. So I'm going to very quickly talk you through how I filmed this, but what's worth noting about is the outside scenes were filmed late August, and the inside scenes, so this is late August, about 10:30 at night, at someone's house. We went to the guy's house, we looked in his kitchen and completely designed it, so that's in the studio in July, that shot. And they're inside a studio. That's outside, that's inside, and we matched the thing. So our designer went and filmed the guy who smoked a lot, so had yellowing paint, so we yellowed down our paint. And so this is all inside the studio, and then that's still inside the studio, and that's outside. Originally we were going to do this section at his place, but actually it worked well in the studio, so we did this. There's a balsa wood stuff, sugar glass, the decanter's made out of sugar glass, fake pottery stuff, and we said you can smash all of this up. Now normally what happens, I don't know if you saw the episode where it went back to the 70s and they had a big fight in the dining room. The two of them, I said to them, you can smash those up, you can smash the bottles up, you can smash the record player. Do not touch the authentic 1970s white artificial Christmas tree, which some of the older ones will remember. It's about 400 quid from a museum. First thing, he backs into it and completely fucks it, and I'm like, ah! Just destroyed it. So, and then what happens is you end with this lovely section here, which I'll get you to play just now, where it's a cross-cut between Francis and Tam, the real reason. And I love what the DOP's done here, which is beautifully lit the inside that looks like candles. It's like kind of Wolf Hall. Thanks, James.
Is that your dinner? What was it? Stew or something? Each fucking one. Francis is sweet. What the bloody hell do you think it's up to? You've been making the hooch, so it's smashed up still. Okay, I'm mute. So sick, I'm guessing. Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to go for you. Just a bit to a lot of the boys. But I can't recover.
So, okay. So poor Kay Donnelly, who plays Francis, brought in for the whole series, that's her line. And one of the execs said to me, do we need that line? I went, yes, she'll kill me if you take that line out. But it looks lovely in there, and I'm trying to get that American Gothic shot of the two people stood next to each other while still telling it, so I really like that little sequence. But that's the kind of thing you have to think about when you've got your script, is from a director's point of view, when you write your plan, if you direct it, keep it simple and take photos now with digital photos with your phone. And me and my script supervisor had exact photos of when it went up and down, and we still got it wrong, and Laura saved our bacon with the up and downs. But because they are filmed a couple of weeks apart, and quite a lot of this, partly due to cast availability and partly due to location and studio being in blocks, quite a few intercut scenes are filmed almost a month and a half apart, and that's something to be really aware of if you're going to direct. Keep your shots simple at those times.
It must take a bit of confidence to film something in July and then something in August and be happy that they're probably going to be okay when you cut them together.
Yeah.
Is confidence the right word?
Well, I think you've got to trust yourself, and this is my tip if you want to be a director, right? You can be completely clueless and really lovely, or you can know loads and be a bit grumpy. And if you're completely clueless but lovely, people will help you and like you. And the guy who does the X Factor, apparently he's not very pleasant but knows everything about it, people will respect you. The best situation is where you're lovely and know everything. Don't be shit and rude, all right? That's the worst situation. So for me, I completely pre-plan it out beforehand, and I've got exactly the shots I want to do. I don't storyboard because I'm terrible at drawing. but I've seen it in my head, and I've done it so long now, I guess. I see it in my head and think, right, that's what I need to do here and here. But with that, I'd taken a lot of photos out on the night shoot, and I was looking at them, who was stood on what heights. And what's a really useful guide? That window had a little bar, so there was a bigger window and a small window, and you can tell, is Jack's shoulder about here on the bar or not? Right, so that's where he needs to get to. And just tell the actors stop now or stand up or whatever. And remember, you can talk to the actors all the way through when they're not talking. You know, stand up, stop, down a bit, you know, etc. So yeah, but yeah, it does take confidence to do it.
How's it gone down? I mean, everybody I've spoken to has loved it. But
anyone here hate it? Seriously, I don't mind, but did anyone really not like it? It's the right answer.
It's a slightly self-selecting audience.
Yeah, I know, but no. But let me ask you, did you think it was still game? Did it feel like still game? Yeah? Okay. What was the big difference for anyone in here? Seriously, anyone who's watched it, what was the main difference, did you think? The way it looked. Okay. Anything else? Eh? Okay, yeah. So I think genuinely, if you looked at just on a poll of 100 tweets, going it's great, you get about 10 that said, it's shite. My favourite one was from a Rangers fan who said, all yous cunts watching still game, it's still shite, never surrender Kenny Miller's pure class. That was his exact tweet. And you think, well, there's your critics. So, but seriously, what people thought sometimes was it wasn't as funny as you remember. And actually, when you look back at an old episode, it's not funny from start to finish. There are sad bits in it, there's exposition and things like that. But our memory is selective enough for us to go, oh, I really like that episode, because what I choose to remember from it is this, this, and this. All our summers as children were always beautiful weather. It wasn't just pishy, dreek rain. And I think that when people watched it, a lot of people watched Ep 1 and went, oh my God, this is different, don't like it. Then watched Ep 2 and went, that's more like it, went back to Ep 1 and went, that's fantastic. And there was a really fascinating kind of phenomenon, I guess, where an awful lot of young people, like guys in here today, about 19, 20, were nostalgic for something that they were only about 2 or 3 years old when it first started, hoping it was what it was. And you go, well, you weren't around when it started. Is it still that? So I think it's gone down extremely well. I was talking to Sophie earlier on about this, that these days it's not just overnight figures that are important. That slot on BBC One achieves just under 4 million, and you're supposed to hit about 4 million viewers. And we regularly got 3 million viewers on the night, and then well over 1 million or about 1 million on what they call the +7, the iPlayer during that week. So by all means, go home and press play again tonight several times. And we won the slot, but more importantly, the way they look at it, there's two things. First of all, we held it, so it wasn't that 3 million people watched it at that time of night, and then by quarter to 10 they went, oh, I'm bored of this, and there was 2 left. It stayed the same. And secondly, the BBC have this thing called appreciation index in AI, and the genre average for sitcoms is 80, and we were regularly about 84 to 87, and for them that means it does brilliant. So I would say 90% of the feedback was excellent. People loved it. The powers that be loved it, and it did its job, which is it pulled in the audiences and it ticked a lot of boxes. So, from that point of view, I think they would be crazy not to commission another series.
Which leads me very nicely into a final question. But before I ask that final question, we're going to have a look at a final clip, I think. Well, not quite a final clip, but a final clip for this section.
So this is at the last episode where, and just keep the volume down again, I'll just talk you through that. This is filming months apart, After Effects, special effects, and everything in to hopefully try and achieve a steady sequence. In this, these two have got drunk in Osprey Heights trying to rob it, and they wake up in the morning and it's about to be demolished. Okay? So what I want to show you is just now, is the two of them wake up. This is in studio, and that's a photo, and then that's live obviously through the high flats there, and then that's back a month later. So they're looking at a photo, but then we went upstairs to a flat and looked out at our cast down below on a second camera. They hear the noise, they leave. This was done about the first week of filming. They didn't even know what they were doing. That left-hand flat is drawn in, okay? So the left-hand flat behind the wire, when you see it, doesn't exist. That's real stuff. That's all real that we put in. That left-hand flat doesn't exist. It's painted in. And then all these guys we filmed on one day out. And then these sparks, in a minute, he gets his foot caught. And then there's sparks which are painted in. And then this is a stunt man. That's Paul. That's a stunt man. That's Paul. And then there's this fantastic bit, go and save yourself. And then that's painted in again. They're all looking at completely artificial bits. He dives onto a mattress. Nothing happens. We show the spark shot, which is painted in. Actually, it's the same shot, I think, just with the sparks to tell you the reason it hasn't blown up is because of this. I should have told you I was standing up, I'm sorry. So it cuts to there, just so you know, and then it comes up and finishes here. The guy with the collie is someone else, that's fine. Stop there, thank you. So you see this sequence, and actually that sequence on script lasts about probably 2 pages. And you know you're in trouble because you get a script sent to you, and it's not lines, it's not Jack, Victor, Tam, Jack, Victor, Tam. It's a block of writing. Winston and Tam realise and hear the siren, they run down the stairs. Winston's leg gets caught in the cable, he pulls it out and topples over, he's trapped under a sofa, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And you think, oh, for God's and then they like scribble, scribble, scribble. So I don't know how many shots are there, and then you're sending stuff away and come back. And what's lovely about a sitcom is that flat Harrier Heights, the one behind Osprey Heights, exists for that episode, but I wasn't going to make it in every single episode, and you won't see it again, hopefully. Touch something wooden quick, because it's a pain in the bum. But what you do is you answer the script, and you say, okay, well, that's what we need to do, so we send it away to get painted in, or the after effects of the sparks. And all the time you have to remember you're trying to make a comic point about this as well. So it's not just to do it for its own sake, it's to lead it in a rhythm to a moment. And the big laugh there is save yourself, I okay. That gets the biggest laugh, it's the smallest line, I okay or I alright. So one of the smallest lines, but gets a massive laugh with I, a bastard, chases it, and then the hitting him with the leg, where he gets hit. Not even the so am I. So actually you're trying to build that whole scene towards those 2 little moments. So am I, and so am I, and I alright. And that can be quite tricky when you've got a lot of outside influences such as After Effects, stuntman, blah, 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 blah.
Thank you. So how are the runes? Reading the runes, what do you think?
Well, I'm taking a month off, I'm knackered. Yeah. And then I'm going to do the play at the Hydro. Anybody coming to see the Hydro? Anyone got the tickets? Good. One of you, yeah, miserable bastard. It'll be a completely new show, and doing theatre brings its own challenges, and that'll be interesting. So I'm doing that next. I'll stop turning away from your camera. I'll be doing that next, and then as soon as we hear, hopefully, we'll just get ready to go again. But the thing with comedy, as you know, or with any scripted drama, you need scripts. So once it gets the go-ahead, then goes a writing period, which I've got nothing to do with. Then we get the scripts in, and then we go, okay, sieve it out, you can't do this. I'm not setting fire to a giraffe again, send it back, and then get it going, and then the whole process starts again, you know.
So you've done TV,
yeah,
and you've done a live show.
Yeah.
Has there ever been any talk about still getting the movie?
What's really interesting is if you look at other British comedy films of recent years, they're all shite, right? They're all rotten, honestly. They're not great. And I'm a massive fan because I'm an old bugger of Morecambe and Wise, and the Morecambe and Wise films were horrific. And Mrs. Brown, the movie, come on, seriously. So it made a packet, but anyone here enjoy Mrs. Brown, the movie? Honestly, admit it? No, it's okay, we're amongst friends. But seriously, there's nothing wrong with it, there's nothing wrong with the content, it's the format of doing it in a movie that has difficulties. And actually, Mrs. Brown was well made, it looked great, and it followed a good story, and there were funny moments in it. But I genuinely think that when you're in a small place like this, you can't do a 2-hour film or an hour-and-a-half film of an extended episode. The point of film is to go somewhere else, and as soon as you take people out of isolation, that becomes a problem. More interestingly, Ford and Greg said it works really well on television, and this was the case with the Hydro show. I don't know how many people saw it. Don't watch the DVD, it's horrific. But the actual Hydro show itself, because it was in such a massive arena, we needed screens. And as soon as you put the screens up, I had friends in the 4th row who were watching the screens, not the acting. It means that the acting performance level could stay what is still game, which is kind of slightly hyper-real. You don't want people doing that kind of nodding and winking And if it was in the Kings, I don't think that the Still Game live show would have worked as well. I think that it was important that you had massive screens so you could keep the performance level the same, so you recognise them as those televisual level characters. And I think that's something else with the film that might be a little bit difficult to achieve. Also, it's an ensemble piece, and you'd have to have some kind of great storyline to weak all of them away. The interplay and relationship between all those characters is what makes Still Game funny, particularly. So you couldn't just take Jack and Victor away, you'd have to take everyone with you. And I think that's another reason for it as well. So I'd love to do a movie, but I don't imagine it would be the best natural next step.
Great, thank you very much. Now, folks, this is the plan from now on. You will get a chance to ask your own questions to Michael, but we're going to take a break at the moment. We're going to mark your we're going to take in your quiz question answers, we're going to mark them, and then we will give you the results of that in the second half of second section of the show. We've also got a 3-minute outtakes clipped to show you for your eyes only. But there's a chance to get a drink, have a chat, and we'll come back in about a quarter of an hour. Is that right? Yes? Is that the plan? Okay, but for the time being, ladies and gentlemen, could you give us a big round of applause for Michael? Thank you very much. Michael Hines. Smashing. Brilliant.